American Mod.
Hello, I'm Greg Rutke Mods, and welcome to episode 2 of my PowerPC series. In this episode, I will be showing you how to upgrade your Mac notebook, either an iBook G3 or G4, or PowerBook G3 or G4, from this hard drive right here. This is a PETA drive, a 5400 RPM, to one of these. This is an mSATA drive. This is a 256 gig mSATA drive. So it's an SSD, which means it will give you a lot more storage and speed up your system by a massive amount. And we will be installing it with one of these, an mSATA to PETA adapter. Now, I decided to open up this part of the series by showing you how to do this upgrade before I introduce my PowerBook G4 Titanium, which we have right here. I also wanted to show you this because I want to upgrade my newest PowerBook, which just came in the mail, the high-resolution PowerBook G4. They only made these for 3 months. They're extremely rare because no one bought them. Anyway, so it's a very neat laptop, but it needs some more power and speed to it. It's fully maxed out, except it still has that spinning hard drive. Now we're going to be using the mSATA because this is the cheapest way to get a SSD in your PETA laptop. And I'll tell you what, it's really worth it. My Titanium already has one in it and it works great. Now before we do this, I'd like to also mention to you that any PowerBook or iBook made before early 2002 do not support big drives. When I say a big drive, I mean any drive over 128 gigabytes, you won't be able to get working. Now, you can bypass this by either getting a 128 or smaller gigabyte SSD, or you can also bypass this by formatting and partitioning out the drive before putting it into the system. Now, these are both post early 2002, so they both work with bigger drives. In fact, you can go up to, I think, around 2 terabytes, but that would be a really expensive mSATA. Anyway, so the reason, once again, that we're using this is because it's the cheapest way. And in fact, it's possibly even the fastest way. And you can get this drive right here used off of eBay for about $60. And even though that cost roughly the same amount as my Titanium, actually I think this was $30. So it's double the price as my Titanium. It's very much worth it if you want the best performance out of your PowerBook or iBook. So anyway, so let's begin, and I'll show you how to install this and then show you the speed differences between the hard drive and the SSD. So let's go. Okay, so before we begin, I would like to show you my PowerBook G4 Titanium and show you that it does indeed have a 256 gigabyte mSATA SSD in it. As we can see right here, formatted, it's got a 238 gigabyte Samsung SSD, which is the same mSATA drive that I bought for my high-res right here. This high-res right now has a 60 gigabyte 4500 RPM drive in it that we will be replacing. Right now it has a very clean version, brand new install of Leopard. And the only thing installed on it right now is the PowerPC App Store and a benchmark tool, which I will be showing you the results, speed differences between the hard drive and the new SSD when we are all said and done. Now, right now I will be rebooting this and showing you the boot speeds. Then I'll show you the upgrade, just how to build the drive and how to install it. I'm not going to show you how to tear this down, but I'll show you the upgrade on how to make the drive and how to install it. And then we'll show you the boot speeds and performance on that compared to the hard drive, and then we'll wrap up the video. So let's go. Okay, so the high res is currently off, and I will show you the real-time boot speed starting right now. To let you know, I will be speeding this up, of course, to save on video time. So let's start. I'll put down my camera real quick and start both at the same time. And here we go. And we are fully booted up. It took roughly 1 minute and 24 seconds. So let's now tear down the system and I'll show you how to install the SSD. Okay, so we'll first begin by building up the drive. This is the 3 parts you'll get: the shell, the adapter itself, and the mSATA, as we can see right here. Now, we'll need to remove these screws right here in the posts, which I'll do right now. Then we'll take the mSATA and slot it into the adapter right here. Then we'll push it down and put the 2 screws here. By the way, I will be trying to link a link to the adapter right here in the description if you're interested in getting one of these. So I'll put these screws back in and then we'll continue. When it is all said and done, this is what it will look like. Now we'll want to take this and set it in our case. Then we'll want to take our screws and screw it into the case, and we'll be making a whole drive. And here is the finished product. As we can see, it looks just like any other PATA drive, and if we put it next to a PATA drive, it's the same size. And it will work in any PATA drive laptop, but we will be putting this into a PowerPC laptop. And that's it. Now the reason why we want to do an mSATA is because it's a lot cheaper than a pre-made PATA drive. The biggest one I've ever seen is a 480 gig, and mSATAs can actually go much higher than that, and the system can see it. Of course, it's a little overkill to go anywhere past 128 gigs probably, but 256 gigs will allow me to do a lot more with my system, and I'll be able to show you a lot more you can do with the system and show you how to multi-boot different operating systems with this. Now this right here, completely built up, is probably about $68. And comparing that to a normal pre-built one, it's a lot cheaper. This is probably 1/3 of the price. It's not worth buying a pre-built SSD. In fact, some of them are probably just mSATA drives inside if you would open them. Not all of them, but some of them are, especially if you get them from a shady seller on a place like eBay. So anyway, this is going to save you a lot of money, and let's get into installing it into the PowerBook. Okay, so here's the hard drive. To my surprise, this is actually a 7200 RPM hard drive, though I don't think it's the original hard drive itself. This drive's actually about a year older than the PowerBook itself. But still, this was the last of the PowerBooks ever made, and it was the most powerful and most advanced. And I'll be doing a lot more videos on it. And the reason why they didn't sell well was because 3 months later, people of course were waiting. 3 months later, these were replaced by the MacBook Pro with the Core Duo Intel CPUs in them. People knew they were coming, so no one bought this PowerBook. And this was the cream of the crop. This is the best PowerBook, and in fact, it could keep up with the Core Duos pretty well. And most of them were sold after the Core Duos came out as, you know, leftovers. So anyway, I'll take this drive completely out, and then we'll install the SSD, and I'll show you what it looks like before I rebuild it. First off, I'll show you real quick that the connector right here for the drive and show you how it plugs in. Now, if you're getting one of these adapters, they usually have the 20th pin still in there, but they usually cut them out. Make sure that it has been cut out, and make sure it is flush, because my titanium actually had the pin sticking out a little bit, and I had to finagle it a little bit to get the cable to connect. So we'll connect this wire by just lining up the pins and pushing it on. And that's what the wire connection will look like. Now I'll put the rest of the hardware on the drive itself and then stick it back in. And here's what it looks like with all the hardware installed. Now let's set it back in the PowerBook. And the SSD is now installed with all the hardware on it. Now the nice thing about this SSD is, of course, all SSDs use a lot less power than the main hard drive. The original hard drives use a lot more power, so this will save battery life if you still have a working battery, and it will just save a lot of power even if you have it plugged in. This drive has already been cloned, so the only thing I have to do is literally put the computer back together. And I cloned it with the PATA adapter right here. It's a great USB to PATA, although, of course, it needs extra power if you are trying to run a main regular hard drive. But when it comes to an SSD, it doesn't, which is quite nice. So I'll reassemble the PowerBook and we'll boot it back up. Okay, and here's the moment of truth. Now, before we start up, I'd like to let you know that this is the second time I've booted this since I installed the drive, and that was so I could run the benchmarks and get the results, so you wouldn't have to sit through that, and you could just see them instantly. Also, I forgot to mention during the hard drive test that it does take a while for the open firmware to initialize. Open firmware is like a PC BIOS or Mac EFI on an Intel Mac, that's the equivalent of it, and open firmware has always been slow. And you'll see that in future videos when we go into the boot menus and stuff on a PowerPC Mac, but once it gets initialized and going, it's fine and it boots up fine. But that's just to show you that it does take a second, and that's what's going to add to the time. But once it gets rolling, you'll see just how much quicker it is. So let's begin. And we're off to the races. And it is fully booted up. It took about 54 seconds roughly for it to boot up. Now, of course, the mSATA is plugged into an ATA bus or an IDE channel, and all Mac notebooks are different from the PowerPC generation. So some will have the ATA 66, some will have the ATA 100, and I believe this one has the ATA 133, which means this thing gets a 133 megabits a second, which is a small, minuscule amount of the mSATA's actual speed. So you'll never get the full potential of the mSATA, but it's a lot quicker. And in fact, even though the mSATA is saturating the bus completely and actually bottlenecking, you'll see the difference in the operating system, and it will boot any application, it seems, nearly instantly. For instance, here's System Preferences, and here's Finder. It's just very snappy. It goes no matter what. It's a lot quicker, and this will help a lot with future videos where I demonstrate things like Linux and maybe MorphOS, for instance, or just OS X in general. And on the PowerBook Titanium and a few of my other PowerPCs, it will also increase the speed of OS 9. So anyway, let's see the benchmark results really quick. And right here, we have the hard drive speeds. It got a score of 35.02. Where with the SSD speeds, it got a 145.72. Now, if we look here, these are the actual speeds that the hard drive itself ran. And here are the speeds that the SSD ran. Now, of course, the uncached read here, it's basically, I believe, just reading the speed of the drive itself. I'm not really sure on that, but that's not a super realistic score, I guess. It might be. That's about the right speed in reading right there. I think the score is just a little off by a lot, but still. That shows you just how big of a difference the speed is in benchmarking. And one last thing to verify that this really is running a SSD. We'll go over to the ATA, and here we go. mSATA 256 gig. It's got 238 gigs formatted, and that's it. So that, I hope, helps you see what mSATA to PATA adapter can do for your PowerPC laptop. And you can also install SSDs into desktops using a SATA to IDE adapter, or in, like, for instance, Power Macs. You can also use a PCI to SATA card and even get quicker speeds out of it. Of course, some SSDs don't like to play friendly with, for instance, a Power Mac G5, but you can still get SSDs to run, and we'll cover those in future videos, though currently I'm not running an SSD in any of them. Anyway, that is the end of this video, and thank you for watching. This has been a RutK Mods video.